Well, Tony, tell me, are people really making thousands of dollars renting out their container home?
That's a good question. I'd say some people are. So it definitely could be a really good investment. I think when you compare container homes to a traditional house or even other types of unique kind of alternative structures, container homes perform really well on Airbnb. We have done a lot of container homes as Airbnb rentals up until now. We work with a lot of investors. And I will say most of them are doing really well. Like we have several units in Zion right now. There's probably about 7 of them that are all Airbnb rentals. And like anyone that has an Airbnb rental, it takes some time. When you first list your unit, you may not be making tons of money. But once you start developing and getting some more reviews, some more credibility, you become a super host. These people that are using them as Airbnb rentals are definitely making over $100 a night per unit and have them rented out probably 80% of the nights.
So if I was interested in listing my container home on Airbnb, what are some of the requirements needed for that?
Yeah, so like anything in real estate, I think it goes back to like location, location, location. If you're in an area that is a little bit more rural, where you have lower regulation, you're not going to have as many requirements you're going to have to meet in order to do it as an Airbnb rental. If you're in the middle of a city that really regulates Airbnb, like we're here in Las Vegas, it's probably the hotel capital of the world, and the hotels do not want Airbnb to be thriving in Vegas because that's less people in a hotel. And so in a city like ours, Airbnb is very regulated. It can be a lot tougher to get your unit approved. And you do want to consider this is if you do your structure as a permanent structure on a foundation that's permitted, you're going to be in really good shape for Airbnb rentals. If, however, maybe you're doing it more as like an on-wheels version, like we have RV models, we do container homes on wheels, you'll just want to check with your local area and make sure that you can rent out an RV. There are some regulations on RVs in other areas. For example, in Vegas, RVs, you're allowed to stay in it for 3 nights out of the month if it's on your property, typically, unless you're in an RV park where then you can use it 30 days or whatever, a full month.
Nice. So you mentioned us being in Las Vegas, and obviously it's very regulated here because of the hotels and stuff. How do I know what a good area is to use my container home as Airbnb?
Yeah, so some of the areas that have been probably the hottest spots for Airbnb that we've noticed have been near national parks. So typically right outside of national parks is a great location. Usually it's smaller towns. This means smaller building departments, a little bit less regulated, and also a lot of tourism. So really good Airbnb market. And so for us, probably the hottest markets we've seen here on the West Coast where we're located have been, I'd say probably #1 is Zion. We've done a lot of stuff north of Zion or on the south side in Springdale and Orderville, and we've seen a lot of success there. Also, I would say Moab, Utah. It's really known for mountain biking, and there's a lot of opportunity to do rentals there. Joshua Tree, California, we've done a lot of units. It is getting more regulated, and so you do need to be wise on how you do that. But the Airbnb market there is one of the highest in the nation. So I would recommend that being a starting point, right? So #1 is property. You have to have property. We've done a lot of stuff in the past where we had Airbnb units, so container tiny homes, and we would try to partner with a property owner and put our unit on their property, have them manage it, and that relationship can get sticky and be kind of tough. So if you have your own property, I'd say that's always best. Put it on your property. You can manage it and rent it out, or you have someone under you managing it. But I'd say national parks are probably the hottest locations, or if you have a main home with a lot of space in your backyard and you're in an area that doesn't have really high regulation, that's a great option.
What would my container home need for it to be eligible to be listed on Airbnb?
Yeah, so I would say you're going to want your container home in a location where it's permitted for you to be able to do so. That's probably just foundational. You got to make sure you're allowed to actually do it on your property. But when it comes to like the actual build out of the container home, there's definitely some different avenues you can take on your build out to really maximize your Airbnb rental. What we've noticed is there's a phrase out there, and it's, the more beds and the more heads you can sleep, the more money you can make on Airbnb. And so the idea with that is the more sleeping space you have in your unit and the more people you can accommodate, the more money you can make. So with our 20-foot container home, typically you can sleep 2 people in it. But what I would recommend is incorporating things on the rooftop deck, maybe a tent, and finding ways to sleep 4, maybe even 6 people by incorporating a lot of stuff on the outside. Also, when it comes to the build out of the interior, when it comes to the kitchen, a lot of times for Airbnb, you don't need a huge kitchen. And you also don't need a ton of storage space in the unit. People are there for a couple of nights. They're probably eating out a lot. So doing a smaller kitchen can work as well. So something that maybe like, you know, you have a mini fridge, a microwave, your coffee maker, a small sink, and maybe a small stovetop, and you're good. You don't need to go all out on the kitchen. When it comes to the size of the container, we've noticed most people will want to do the 20-foot containers. So those are 160 square feet, and they really function a little bit more like a studio. The reason they're great for Airbnb is it's a lower investment up front that you have to make, and you're still going to do really well on the rental side. The other option could be doing a 40-foot container, and we've seen people do really well with those also, but I'd say most bang for your buck is probably a 20-foot Airbnb model.
So thinking about all those things you're just talking about, what do you think a good price per night I could charge for my container home?
Yeah, so what we've noticed is when you first enter the market, you can't demand a super high price point usually. That's your time to really draw people to your unit by incentivizing them with a good price and then getting really good reviews. So I've noticed like the first probably 6 to 12 months, you're really trying to develop your reputation. And so you may be able to get, you know, $90 a night, $100 a night, something like that, but you're just trying to get people in. I'm talking like a 20-foot container. And then over time, that can go up. And so we've seen, you know, I'll use 2 units as an example. We did 2 units in Springdale, which is just outside of Zion. This was back in 2018. They're both 20-foot containers. And right now they're probably getting about $125 on the weekdays and about $150 on the weekends per unit. And their occupancy is probably 80%, if not maybe even more, especially in like the busier seasons. And so you can generate really good money. I mean, you can make 30 grand a year on an Airbnb rental with a container home that's 20 foot by 8 foot. So you definitely can create a lot of income that way. But I just encourage you that it does take some time. Get those reviews, and for those of you in even maybe really prime locations, you can demand even more than that.
So I've noticed a lot of unique places to stay on Airbnb. Why would I choose a container home over any of those other types of places to stay?
Yeah, so when it comes to kind of like from the side of using this as an investment, container homes definitely draw a lot of attraction. Mm-hmm. People are interested in staying them. There's other unique kind of different type spaces that do something similar. So if you go on Airbnb right now and you look up an Airstream, like you're going to see Airstreams doing really well on Airbnb because people want to stay in Airstreams. And so I think containers just kind of fall into that same type of category of like different unique structures. People want the Instagrammable moments and want to stay in something that when they post it, people are excited and they're like, wow, that's really different and unique. And I think even now with like the tiny home movement, people are interested in seeing what is it like to live in a tiny home, or what would that experience be like to stay at night in a tiny home. And so with that, you're going to do a lot better with a container home versus something that's more traditional. But I would say there's other types of products out there that aren't containers that also can do very good on Airbnb that are different and unique. I think container homes are just one of many that you can choose.
Well, hey, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. For any other questions you may have, go ahead and go to alternativeliving.spaces.com, and there's actually a More tab in the top right, and if you click on that, go down to Stay in a Unit, you can see all of the Airbnb rentals we have, kind of located around the country.
Yeah.
And you can see any examples you have there, or even if you want to stay in the unit itself, go ahead and check that out.
And I think what's cool about that is, for those of you that are interested in investing, these are great examples to reference and see how much are they getting per night, what's their occupancy, where are they located, and it's a little bit of research for yourself as you're trying to figure out maybe where you can place your unit and how much you think you can make per year. But yeah, with that, thank you guys for your time, and we'll see you next time.